Welcome to Miss Martin Muses and Nights to Remember. One night to remember what from one date, April 14th. I think it's amazing to me that so much happened on the night of April 14th and the morning after, because, of course, then the consequences of what happened on these nights to remember occurred. I was going to do this last night, but I got tired and I went to bed. But this is the morning after. So that is what we are talking about today. So, those of you that know about April 14th, go ahead and start sharing. And if you know other nights to remember that you would like to share, please go ahead and do so. But before we do, I don't know if this was a night on April 14th, but it most certainly is April 14th. It is the birthday of this amazing man, Robert Carlyle. He was born on April 14th. Definitely a day to remember. This man is not only an amazing actor, everything that he does, he gives 200,000,000%. He is unbelievable. He is also an incredibly gracious person. He is just the nicest person. He really is very supportive of his fans. He is very unassuming. He is not too big for his britches. He's quite humble, and I have nothing but good things to say about this man. So cool and so straightforward. So it was a pleasure in my life back in the day. But yes, to so anyway, so this is Robert Carlyle. Look at him. Look at him. This is him being Rumpelstiltskin on Once Upon a Time. See, the fact that he's able to pull that off. And he even said that he couldn't see very well with these contacts in and the like, and so it was almost like he would go back to his miming skills. If you've watched Once Upon a Time, he is definitely the best part of it. Seasons 1 through 3, those are the good ones. Everything goes to hell in season 4. First thing I saw this man in was The Full Monty. Very funny movie, very poignant movie, and you get to see a lot of him. And currently, this is what I've been watching him in. It is called Cobra. Not the other Cobra, but it's a political thriller kind of TV show based on like Crisis Operating Something Center, whatever they have in England that the prime minister does when like crises happen. And he is the prime minister. Does a great job in that as well. And I'm very bitter that we still can't get season 3. Takes forever to get that stuff over here. And I don't sail the high seas for several reasons, most prominently of which is the fact that you get some very interesting spam when you try to. Well, look who's here all the way from the future and from the same side of the pond as the great Robert Carlyle. It is Potato Revan. Excuse me, it is the evening. No, that is true. That is true. So it could be nights to remember, but the night before last. Everyone Google, or if you care to, maybe Robert Carlyle was born in the evening. It doesn't matter, but April 14th is the birthday of Robert Carlyle, who we love. But something else happened really important. Another night to remember on April 14th. This is John Wilkes Booth. The president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, made the worst decision ever to go to the theater on Good Friday. He shouldn't have been going to the theater anyways on Good Friday. But that's neither here nor there. It's too late now. But yes, this quite bad person and a few other conspirators decided to remove him from the planet. I'm not sure how much we're allowed to actually say the word, so I'll just be careful. They made a sequel to the Full Monty. Yes, I did watch that. The TV show. Once again, the best part of it was Robert Carlyle because he could read the phone book and be amazing. It was a little too depressing, though. I think it was ill conceived, but it was nice to get the original cast back. My humble opinion. So, anyways, big old conspiracy. They were not just going to take out Abraham Lincoln, they were going to also take out William Seward and I think the whole cabinet. Andrew Johnson, the vice president, was also supposed to be assassinated, but the guy noped out. There was a conspiracy that Booth survived. Hmm. Well, did we ever see his body? I know they surrounded a farmhouse afterwards and removed him from the planet. That's the way the story goes. Also, Booth and Bones was his secret descendant. No way! I need to watch Bones. That's the one with Denethor from The Lord of the Rings, isn't it? Or rather, The Return of the King. Okay, so that's the not so nice guy. Here is Ford Theater. Pretty much a museum nowadays. I remember going to see this as a kid, and the very spot where Lincoln was removed from the planet. Well, actually, he didn't die that night. He died the next day. That's why it's and the morning after. So you can see the infamous balcony. Oh dear. All decorated up with the American flag. So Abraham Lincoln and his wife were watching the show. It was called Our American Cousin. You know what would be really grim? If they ever performed Our American Cousin at this theater. Oh, that would just be so weird. But yes, I need to look that up. Was it ever performed ever again either? Because it's kinda messed up. That's the one with Angel from Buffy. Ah, see, imagine at the play 5 minutes before a guy said, "Tell me what happens. I need to pee. Get back what I miss." Oh, no. That's dark. Can I buy a ticket? Oh. Oh. Yeah, Matt. Oh gosh. That would be wild if you miss that. One of the seminal events in United States history. It was the first president to be assassinated and also changed perhaps the course of the post-Civil War America. It is Stephen Ransom. Why, hello there. Hello. Thank you for being here. We are talking about nights to remember, night April 14th. So we're still on the night. So while Abraham Lincoln and his wife are watching the show, oh, here's a closer view of the balcony where they were. He came up from behind him. I did blur it just in case. This is obviously an artistic representation. And one single shot to the head. After he shot President Lincoln, then he leaped over the balcony, landed on the stage, breaking his leg, and yelled, Sic semper tyrannis. While everyone's going, dude, Can we just have a small moment of silence to say, what kind of idiotic protection was there that night? Or obviously none. I know there's a whole story about they were all doing other things, but wait a second. You never leave the president of the United States alone, even at a play. It's one of those wild things, and probably there's some conspiracy theories about why they didn't have proper Secret Service protection. It wasn't Lincoln planning on stepping down after the war as he just wanted a quiet life. No, not after the war, but after his second term. Yes, because he had won a second term and then he was going to. Broke his ankle. Oh, okay. Lincoln had to pay for the presidential out of his own pocket at the time. The guard. Oh, well, there we are. That's it. Yeah, they were drinking, which, were they fooled because they're silly people? Stephen Ransom says they should do the play again. After all, I've been to the celebrations at a restaurant that the Mansons went to in '69 before going to Miss Tate's place, the Manson family dinner. The place was packed. Wow. And well, they do last dinner on the Titanic things where you can eat what the was on the menu. And I think there's even a book, a cookbook. Yeah, we're morbid, aren't we? We're very morbid people. It wasn't just Abraham Lincoln that was targeted. It was also William Seward, who was the Secretary of State, which is a pretty darn important role the um in the world. In America. Just a second. I have to send a text here. Voila. He got stabbed and kept the scars the rest of his life. And not only was he harmed, but so was his son. Because, see, he was homesick with something. And he, what did he do? He was lying there sick, and this dude who was supposed to assassinate Seward, he was like, "I've got some medicine," and they're all like, "Okay, I'm not. Well, why don't you just give it to me?" And he didn't. And then, of course, he tried to attack him, so he attacked his son. And I think his son got injured. Yeah, he got hit over the head. And oh, oops. Okay, there's no other representations. And the daughter was there also, and so was the other son, and they were all injured, frankly. So it it wasn't just Abraham Lincoln, but they were all okay, and Seward survived, but had a bunch of scars on his head for the rest of his life. Well, after all that, Abraham Lincoln was taken to a house across the street, which is also a museum nowadays, where he passed away. So it went off to the great beyond. Mhm. And in 1561, the Nuremberg Lights. Was that on April 15th, or is that just another night to remember? That is definitely a night to remember. Actually, I am going to be sending that one on to Mara for maybe her good, the bad, and I'm sorry, the good, the fun, and the weird show, because that is definitely weird. The Nuremberg Lights. Yeah, and even some depictions showed that it was what appeared to be. Yes, it was April 14th. Thank you, Potato Rabbit. Yeah, it appeared to be aliens and things that were fighting in the heavens above, and it was seen by a whole bunch of people. And I believe with them, they weren't thinking aliens, they were thinking like hell, life God's coming to judge us because we suck. Yes, it was. Talk about a night to remember. Okay, we'll quickly go a little bit with that before we move on to Abraham Lincoln, or rather to the Titanic. Right now, this is where Abraham Lincoln died. And I remember as a kid being surprised when I learned that he survived that long. Because if you think about it, you get hit in the head, but not to get too graphic, perhaps where the injury was, let's put it that way, that it didn't quite get it, but he never regained consciousness. Let me see, it was 1561. I'm bringing that up. All right, it's all clear. So, rest in peace, Abraham Lincoln. The king at the time even fired cannons at the sky. That is wild. Oh, look who it is. It is a Dega outlaw. It is a Dega outlaw. Here we are. We're talking nights to remember. Oh, there is Steve Kenobi. Hello, Teresa and company. I do hope you are well. Why, yes, I am. Stephen Ransom said that time when aliens and angels occupied the sky as the same thing. The woodcuts are amazing. Okay. One man who saw Lincoln said he was oh, yeah. I'm not going to talk about the graphic stuff. Yeah, he wasn't going to wake up. Yes. It just was not instant. But yeah, I've never like totally gone into the graphic details of it. Maybe because it's just a little too grim for me. Look at everyone saying hello. So here we go. This is the Nuremberg Lights. A mass sighting of a celestial phenomenon or UFOs occurred in 1561 above Nuremberg on April 14th, another night to remember. According to the broadsheet, around dawn of 14th of April 1561, many men and women of Nuremberg saw what the broadsheet describes as an aerial battle out of the sun, followed by the appearance of a large black triangular object and exhausted combatant spears falling to earth in clouds of smoke. Let's see. Here we go. Let's have a quicker look at this. This is describing this battle in the stars that they saw. Oh, now that's grim. All right. So, here is that celestial phenomenon. You can see the sun in the middle. I think the one on the bottom is supposed to be the black triangular thing. Obviously, it is not very realistic. I think in the lower right corner is what you were referring to about the cannon going in the sky, or if it was things falling and then exploding. But yeah, it kind of looks like what people would consider a close encounter of the first kind? Is that close encounter of the first kind? I think it is. I mean it as a historical artifact. Oh, yeah, that's still grim. But, I don't know. I don't know what hat because all men wore hats in public, women too, until the 1960s, frankly. But it was practice. Men would remove their hats when they entered a building. For a modern interpretation, see Stargate SG-1's 4th season finale. Oh, okay, cool. Well, yeah, so what do y'all think? Could this have been a really true sighting of aliens, a big space battle? I think it's pretty wild. Some people have tried to explain it a bit with like, science, like, that it was really what do you call it? Some sort of sun stuff, but I don't know, this looks awfully specific rather, and there they s in the writing there, it tells the story. So, let me know in the chat, real or not real? I think it's pretty real. Potato Ribbon says, "Well, remember the Earth is moving through space. Who knows what we moved through?" Hmm, could be. Yeah, maybe they were just minding their own business, having a big space fight, and we just got in their way. Oh boy. So another night to remember, especially if you were hanging out in Nuremberg in 1561, April 14th. Thank you for the tip. I had heard of it. I just didn't know it was April 14th. That's not the only newspaper on the subject. I think it's very real. Yeah, there were lots of people that saw it, and I think it's very real too. It's kind of cool when you think about it. I mean, obviously, they weren't necessarily hostile to us. Seems like they gave 0 clucks. They were just, "Hey, we're fighting here. Oh, they're these little humans, whatever." Sorry, I was hanging out in Bavaria in 1561. Yeah. And and if I'm correct, this was the one that happened in on April 14th, but weren't there other similar phenomenon reported in Switzerland and other places? I think there might have been. Maybe the moment when the meek inherited our earth from alien warlords. Yes. If I was minding my own business, I would think maybe it was the judgment, the great judgment, some sort of sign from God. There's been ones Ireland has its own story at the time. Ooh, cool. Idiga Outlaw says, "Extinction Day for the Hoy at the hands of the Nibe." Yeah. So, the sky was lit up on April 14th. So, what do we have so far these nights to remember? Well, we have the birth of Robert Carlyle. We have the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, and an alien space fight in Nuremberg. Remember, one of the battles was put off because of the lights from God in the sky. Hmm, alrighty. Oops. Oh, and now going back to my other presentation. This is one that I know far too much about because I studied this a great deal back in the day. The other night to remember, April 14th, 1912. Though technically this didn't happen on April 14th, this was April 15th. This was the next morning. This was the date that the Titanic April 14th was the date the Titanic hit the iceberg at approximately 11:40 PM. It took 3 hours to sink and sank at 2:22 in the morning. So, the and I get the title of this stream from the book about this called A Night to Remember, which still, in my humble opinion, is one of the best books about it. Hello, Corey Cochran. Thank you for being here. Everyone's waving. The A Night to Remember was written in published rather in the 1950s, maybe late 1940s. I don't know the date of the book, and was made into a movie later. There was information that obviously the writer was not privy to, things that we weren't really able to confirm until the Titanic was found in the 1980s. Ah, oh, it is also the anniversary of the Dust Bowl. What is it about today? Do you believe in the banking conspiracy around the thinking? Oh, good question. Yes, I've heard of that. My only problem is you would have to really, really try to work it all out that the disaster would have played out the way it did, because there were so many factors about the hitting of the iceberg, the way they hit the iceberg, the the circumstances of the evening. How would they know the iceberg was there? For example, it has been said that scientists and engineers have determined if the Titanic didn't try to avoid it and just hit it head on, it would have been able to stay afloat. Now, some people may have been killed, especially those in certain areas, or maybe if they were out on the deck, but the loss of life would not have been as hard. The fact that there was no moon, but a clear night, so they weren't able to see breakers, and that the exact way it hit that specific iceberg tore open certain things so that the safety protocols weren't in place. The fact that they didn't have binoculars, which is unforgivable. Fact that the wireless dudes had told the other guy from nearby to shut up, that they were in his way, and he's like, "Fine, well, it's time for me to go to bed anyways." So he went to bed like a few minutes before the first distress call happened. But the fact that we had so many people, so many movers and shakers of the financial world on the Titanic, like maybe another disaster was being planned and they just got lucky. Stephen Ransom says the Titanic took almost the entire 1% with it. Uncanny coincidence if you consider the fallout of World War One. Yeah, I mean, the big power players of the day were on there. I get annoyed with Cameron because a lot of his theme of that Titanic movie was kind of like, oh, they were all greedy, oh, they were all selfish. Even though while he was showing, actually the first class men behaved very heroically. There was really only one that one could argue wasn't, and that was Ismay, who the owner who got off in a lifeboat. And the other ones acting like French showers were his fictional ones. But all of them assisted with the evacuation, getting the women and the children, even the ones in 3rd class, as much as they could into the lifeboats, or like was shown in the movie, "We're dressed in our best and we're gonna go down like gentlemen." Potato Reverend says, "And took all of the 3rd class, they claimed they locked the gates." Yeah, we see, and that's not necessarily true, because there was actually a lot of people did survive in the 3rd class. But the percentage of it was worse because they were down below, and there was a lot of confusion. But the how was it? Almo all but 3 women, and children in the 1st class survived. Was it 3? 1? No, 4, counting the child, uh, survived from 1st class, most of the 2nd class. And then, yes, the 3rd class was definitely the largest population there, and also they were the furthest away, and yeah, I mean, there were definitely far more, but there were a lot of survivors from them, from the 3rd class, rather. There was also the coal fire, which warped and weakened the metal in the fire last weeks. Yeah, that's where you might think that something weird was going on, that there was a coal fire. And again, correct me if I'm wrong on the numbers, but that's how I understand it. The judge refused to hear it, which is ridiculous. The White Star Line conspiracy, how they switched ships so the Titanic was already a loss. Ooh. There was a replacement of that was a replacement of the propeller. They were swappable, but the Olympic and Titanic had drastic differences. The electric generator rooms had men who were told to go, and they closed the doors and kept lights running as long as they could. Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of heroism that night. Indeed, Raven, at least the paper, they were very different, but who had all the papers and who offered them as evidence. Yeah, see, and that's where the conspiracies go, because there was a lot of weird stuff, but, it's like, for crying out loud, uh, I'm looking this up, by the way, survivors, because now I'm fact checking myself on Titanic. Yes, but there were also physical difference, part hole positions, and different placements, yeah. The one that's really very sad, mainly because it's dealing with a child, there was, like, a crazy chick who lost her baby died, and then she became a nanny for I forget their names. I'll have to look up their names, but she was a nanny for this family, and they had a girl who was about 5, and when the Titanic hit the iceberg, she, like, freaked out and was, like, obsessed with saving the baby. There's a little baby boy that she was a nanny for, so she, like, freaked out, grabbed the baby, and got into a lifeboat. The family, they were like, "Oh my gosh, she freaked out and stole the baby," and they didn't know that they were safe on a lifeboat, so they were frantically searching. There were several chances where the little girl and the mother could have gotten into a lifeboat, but they weren't gonna go without the baby boy, and unfortunately, by the time it was too late. Yeah, so people that went down with the ship in the first class was by choice, and that's another thing that's quite tragic about it, that a lot of people in 3rd class, it was not by choice. But the woman who the woman and little girl, again, forget their names, they could have gotten in a lifeboat, they were looking for the kid. The, uh oh, what was her name? The old the Strausses. She refused to get in the lifeboat and leave her husband. She said, "Nope, we've been married this long, I'm gonna stay with you." So she died, and Edith, I forget her last name, she had a chance to get into one of the last lifeboats. I think it was what Collapsible C, but then there was someone else getting in. She's like, "No, no, you go ahead and go. You've got a family, and I'll just catch the next one." And she did pass away. All right, I got the percentages. First class had the higher survival rate with 62% survival rate. Now, this is also including the men. Rather, the percentage rate. Like, remember, most of the casualties were men. So 62% survival rate in first class, second class 41%, and third class 25%. Overall, women and children survived at rates of above 75% and 50% respectively, while only 20% of men survived. And we're going to see some of the details of how the men survived. Still, it sucked to be you. Yes, there was also oh, wait, we already got that. The Japanese, Adega Atlas says, "Guy's story always gets me. His regret for being on a lifeboat before many of the women and children is haunting." Was that a I need to figure that out because was that actually confirmed? I knew an elderly one of the kid whose dad was on Lusitania. Oh, yeah. Well, the Lusitania, it sunk off the coast of Kinsale, off of Old Head, in which I'm sure you know all about. That was always a big deal. We would learn a lot about that in our just hanging around Kinsale with their friends. The Strausses were the inspiration for the elderly couples, also were the ancestors of the driver of the Titan sub who imploded. You're right. Wasn't that wild? Yeah, that's another unfortunate morning to remember. That very tragic death. Yeah. So the men who did survive on the Titanic, well, first of all, it would be officers like that or crewmen that were ordered to go because the lifeboats had to be manned by an experienced person. They survived by getting into the uh, collapsible A and collapsible B. Collapsible B actually was overturned. We're going to see that. So they actually kind of went down with the ship, but were pulled out or climbed onto those ships. And then there were some that did go ahead and get in the lifeboat, especially at the beginning of it when they in the first class where they just they didn't think it was actually a problem. I don't know why, but oh well. And so people weren't getting in the boat. So they're like, fine, just get whoever you can in the boat. There's been a debate about maybe if Lightoller had done that, that maybe more would have survived. They would have been men, but he was incredibly strict. He said, "You weren't a woman, you weren't a child, you were not getting in a lifeboat." Didn't one of the boats swing back onto the decks? I think that you're talking about collapsible A, and then that was the one that will float off with it, which we'll see. So here it is sinking. But before we do, there it was looking nice and good. Titanic made 2 stops before it went out to open sea. So it went from Southampton to Calais, I believe it was Calais, where it picked up a lot of people there too, and then stopped off in Ireland, and at the time what was called Queenstown, but is now called Cove. That's where a lot of the Irish immigrants who many of which will pass away were from, boarded. Some of the less luckiest SOBs on the planet were the ones that were just on the Titanic to go to Calais or stopped off in Southampton. And one of them is this particular priest who took a bunch of pictures. He was going from London to Cove. So some of the he had a camera and he used it. So kind of haunting. Here is the captain. I don't know if this one was taken by the dude. There's a captain who later played Theoden King. or they did the technical aspects of James Cameron's Titanic were amazing. The replica and the way that the real people looked like they got actors that really looked like the real people. So there is a captain. He will go down with the ship, as was appropriate. This was the photos taken. I believe this individual was in second class, but I think he was allowed to wander around. Let's see, who took these pictures? Yeah. Oh, it was a Jesuit, and he was Irish. Francis Patrick Mary Brown. You talk about a name. Yes. And he was the one who took these pictures. You can find pictures of him. It's quite fascinating. So here's some people hanging out. Check out the deck. Oh, oops, I stand corrected. It was not Calais, it was Cherbourg in France. Says that the priest, he boarded the Titanic on the afternoon of the 10th of April, 1912. He was booked in the cabin number A37 on the promenade deck. Oh, wait, maybe he did go first class. It said that his ticket was a present from his uncle. Yeah, including he took a picture of the Marconi room, which is going to be incredibly important during the, sinking. Yeah, yeah. So there we go. Look at that. Obviously, these are the first class pictures. All Titanic footage is the Olympic well, yeah, except for these ones. Yeah. It docked at Trabolgan Holiday Village. I went to Trabolgan. That place is great. You can hear the footsteps. Yeah. Reminds me of the Queen Mary. A guy forgot the Marconi working hours before the crash. Yeah. Well, that's I mean, it's so good, and they were really brave too. One of them survived, and that's how we get such a good play-by-play of it sinking. This is a drawing, the famous staircase, the dining area, incredibly luxurious. Oh, I wanted one of these so bad. This would be so nice to travel. One of the first class cabs. I think this was like the super duper one, the ones that were the most expensive and went onto those private little decks, which was shown in the movie Titanic. They were like suites. Here is a picture from steerage from third class. Now, if you were minding your own business traveling third class, this was considered really nice. Here's a dining hall. So, while obviously compared with the first class, it's not as fancy, but th for a lot of these people, especially the immigrants, this was, like, the coolest thing ever, which is also what makes it so sad is this was gonna be the last, and they went from having the time of their lives to fighting for their lives. This is what people believed is the actual iceberg. Maybe it is, maybe it wasn't, but it's often believed to be the one. This was a photo that Father Francis Mary Brown, whatever with the really long name, took. And during the night to remember, they will heroically stay until it literally quits and then jump in the water. Both will get on overturned collapsible B, but only one will actually survive. Now, this is obviously from the movie Titanic. We didn't have this good a view of the sinking. Very technically done very, very well. So this is as we're going into April 15th. People being evacuated, the women and the children. And if I am correct, yeah, you can see the sailors that manned it, and I think it has a few of the since there are some men in this, and this is one of the first ones, this is probably on the side where Murdoch was loading the lifeboats because Lightoller wouldn't have it. Now check this out though. They do show, look, men, first class men saying goodbye to their wives. They're being gentlemen. They're not trying to be cowards and saying farewell. All right. Now, oh yeah, the unsinkable Molly Brown. Yes. Yeah, the Carpathia almost broke her rudders trying to get there. Yeah, but they were 4 hours away. It was really awful. Now this is collapsible A. This is the one that they weren't able to launch. They were able to launch C and D, but they weren't able to because they weren't on the rudders. They had to move them over there. So people did get into it, and then as the ship sunk, it was washed overboard and mostly able to save some people, though many did still freeze to death because water got into the boat. I think there was one woman who survived from this, but don't quote me on that. I think this is where there was a woman, but also it was really terrible, especially for women because they had their heavy skirts. So this is collapsible A. And then I'm showing you here collapsible B. This is from the movie version of A Night to Remember. Yes, I see that potato ribbon. It was accurately, believe it or not, shown in Titanic. This guy was black. He was 8,000 million sheets to the wind, drunk. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna get drunk. Here we go. And he was on the end of the ship when it went down and survived. I believe he got to collapsible B, which is what we're looking at here. So they weren't able to launch it. It was overturned. It got washed overboard, and people that were in the water found it and clambered on top of it. This is where Lightoller will swim to because he went down with the ship, but hey, you see some debris, you're going to get on top of it. Also, Harold Bride and his companion, the Marconi operators, they will get here. Bride will survive. Potato Burn says that the baker did not remember the sinking. No, I believe it. Now, Lightoller did once he got onto the ship, he got people organized because they were swamping, they were getting desperate. It's like, and it was beginning to sink. So he kind of did do something very similar to what you are seeing here. And many did freeze to death. Eventually, as dawn happened and they could all see each other and stuff, a few of the other boats took on the people from Collapsible B who were able to climb into better lifeboats. All right, these are real pictures taken from passengers on the Carpathian. This is them arriving, or Carpathia. Is it Carpathia? I believe so. And so this is where they will be picked up. This was actually a while after the date, the sinking. The, they saw the ship and they retrieved it. So I don't know if this actually is collapsible B, but it is a very accurate representation of what it might have looked like. Last but not least, I decided to throw this one out here. This is Harold Bride. He got frostbite, I believe, or severe damage from that night. And I mean, he was eventually okay, but, it did suck to be him. Oh, and then Henry the First. There it was a picture taken of all the officers that survived. There was like 4 of them, maybe 5. Again, in many cases, it wasn't because of cowardice, it was because they were doing their duty by manning the lifeboats. Also, we all know about the heroic musicians on Titanic. They kept playing and keeping people encouraged as the ship was going down. 1,500 died. It was really bad. One boat was half empty. The guy in charge made them went back. The only boat saved people in the water. Yes, that was 4th Officer was it Officer Lowe who did that? It was shown in the movie somewhat accurately. I call him Horatio Hornblower because that's who played him. What was not accurate was they had him having a flashlight. They did not have a flashlight, but James Cameron decided to do it for the dramatic purposes because that's what was also so terrible. Everyone was in pitch dark. And even when he went back to try to save people, they couldn't see people. Even if they heard people yelling for help, he couldn't find them. I believe only 4 people got pulled out. One of them was not Rose. But you are correct. And I think if I'm correct, he also consolidated. He got a bunch of people to go into 3 other boats so that he could pick up as many people as he could. Um, did any lifeboats go after it? I'm trying to find the name, I forget it. There was a time when I definitely would have remembered every single detail. Of course, most of them were dead. They had died from hypothermia. Nowadays, well, first of all, nowadays that wouldn't have even we wouldn't have even had this situation happen. But if we had, some modern technology might have been able to revive some of them. But you don't have long in that kind of cold water. He got the boats to stay together, correct. So, that's Titanic. Now, this doesn't have anything to necessarily do with a specific night to remember, but unfortunately, here in the United States, April 15th, well into the evening, is tax day because everyone always waits to the last minute. Yes, April 15th is notorious for that. But thank you, everyone who's been popping in. I hope maybe I got some of your curiosity up. I know some of my curiosity is up. Some of these details that I've been hearing, and it makes me always want to go back and revisit these great events. So we had April 14th, the birth of Robert Carlyle. We had the Lights above Neuenburg in 1561. We had the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, and last but certainly not least, the sinking of the Titanic. So stay tuned. We're going to have some pub crawl. Pub crawl night 5 is going to be happening. We're going to have Archer Collin. We're talking about reenacting a 12th century English battle archery things, which is going to be incredibly awesome. That's scheduled for tomorrow. We'll see if it stay tuned. Stay tuned. We're still working out some of the final details. Stay tuned for Mr. Grant Gregory as well, and many, many others. I have the Saturday we will be talking about the House of the Plantagenet, the anarchy in English monarch history. The first big civil war that broke out over the succession. IRS, irresponsible revenue squandering. Oh gosh. Don't we know it? And many, many others. And I did go ahead and make a playlist for all of these history things. So if you wouldn't mind maybe giving a watch and some active listening and watching, because it helps me, helps my channel, but also maybe you'll learn something or you can correct some things that I have to say. I plan to be on Sporkings if the stream happens tonight. We're going to be talking about Fire and Blood, the book on which the House of the Dragon is based. So that's it. Thank you very much, Stephen Ransom, Potato Revan, for coming in. Adega Outlaw. We had Steve Canova. Kenobi wave, at us. Who else? Corey Cochran, and all of you that came in and out and will be watching on the replay. I definitely do appreciate you, and I like you keeping me company. So have a great day, everyone. Have a great day, and be certain to make sure you have enough lifeboats.